Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Physics and Me, and today we are going to discuss continuous charge distribution. So this is in continuity of all my lectures of class 12. So we are discussing chapter number 1, and this lecture in particular would concentrate upon the continuous charge distribution. So let's go ahead. So basically, what do we mean by continuous charge distribution? See, when we are talking about charges, when we're talking about charges around us, we see you never see contribution from a single electron really. Okay, so we are talking about macro objects. So things around us are pretty large in size. Fine. So when we talk about the charge distribution on such objects, when we talk about charge distribution on such objects, we do not take the quantum nature of charges into account. We will not take contribution of due to one electron or two electron like that. In that case, we ignore the quantum nature of the charges and we consider them to be a continuous charge distribution. Fine. So in that case, how do we calculate the force on a charge due to such a distribution of charges? So consider this. Suppose this is my object which is charged, and there is some test charge here, q naught. There's some test charge q naught here. I want to see what is the force exerted on this test charge due to this charged object. Okay, so in that case, how do I proceed? In that case, we know that Coulomb's law is valid only for a point charge. So what we do is we consider only a very very small portion of this charged object, which this small portion of the charged object would obviously contain only a small charge dq. Okay, this small portion will contain a small charge dq, and we will take the contribution of that small charge dq. So contribution of that small charge dq would be a small force df. So that would be, again we are applying Coulomb's law. Now we know that Coulomb's law is very much valid for a small point charge. Here r hat denotes the direction of the force which is exerted by the small charge element dq. So this would be, dq would be called as charge element, a small charge element, and r hat basically denote the direction along which the force on test charge will act. So that would be your vector r divided by the magnitude of the vector r. I can write it as r divided by r, or I can also write it as, basically an r written here without an arrow hat denotes the magnitude of the vector. At times you will find any one of these notations in your books. So now we have contribution due to that small charge element dq. Now I can simply apply my superposition principle. We can consider many such small elements dq, and then I apply my principle of superposition. The net force acting on the test charge q naught would be simply the vector sum of all these forces due to individual charged elements. So I can simply integrate over the expression, and I integrate my expression number 1. Now from this expression I can take out the values 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught and q naught outside my integral, because these are going to be a constant. dq and r square stay inside the integral, because these values, because you can see the value of the distance from the charges would be different. So these values remain inside the integral and the other values can be taken out. So this is a general technique that we use when we are having the continuous charge distribution, that first we will take the contribution due to a very small element, and then we will integrate over that small element's contribution to get the net contribution due to the whole object. So the charge distribution itself can be of three different types. Fine. Suppose consider a sphere, consider the surface of a table, consider a very thin electrical wire. So when the charge is spread over a 3D region like a sphere, then the charge distribution is volumetric in nature. When the charge is distributed over a plane surface like a 2D surface, then the charge distribution is called as surface charge distribution. When the charge distribution is over a very thin material like a one-dimensional, which can for all purposes can be considered one-dimensional, then it would be considered line charge distribution. Okay, based upon the type of distribution, we define some quantities which help us find out the contribution of the charged elements. So these quantities are called as volume charge density. We define volume charge density when our charge is distributed over a volume. We define surface charge density when our charge is distributed over a two-dimensional surface, and we define line charge density when our charge is distributed over a linear or one-dimensional surface. Okay, these are denoted by the symbols. Volume charge density is denoted by rho. Surface charge density is denoted by the symbol sigma, and line charge density is denoted by symbol lambda. So now let us study each one of these densities in detail and how these help us to find out the net contribution by the charged object. So let's first come to volume charge distribution. So suppose this is a spherical object. And I want to find out what's the contribution of how much force is it exerting on a small test charge Q0 kept here. Fine. So what I will do is I'll consider a very small region. I'll consider one very small element of this object. This would be a very small region. So dV. Okay. Now corresponding to this type of charge distribution, volume charge distribution, I just told you we have volume charge density, rho. So volume charge density is defined as the charge contained per unit volume. It is defined as the charge contained per unit volume. So that would be dq by dv, charge contained per unit volume. That would be my volume charge density. Now, knowing the value of volume charge density and knowing the small volume dV, I can find out the amount of charge which is there in that particular volume of the object. See, understand the importance that why are we breaking it down into small volumes, because our Coulomb's law cannot be applied simply to continuous charges, because Coulomb charge is valid only for a point charge. So now what we have done is we have broken down that whole object into smaller components. So now we are looking at the contribution of each such component. So if this object is a sphere, then this dV or the value of V would be 4 by 3 pi RQ. Okay. Had it been a cylinder, then it would have been pi r square h. So it would be dependent upon the shape of your surface. Okay, so right now I am taking the example of a sphere, but it need not be always so knowing this, knowing the volume charge density, I can find out what would be the charge in that small volume. So that would be rho times dV. Now I go back to my approach which I taught you in my previous concept. I told you I will take the force due to contribution of that small element, and then to find out the total force, I take the integral of that contribution of that small element. So what do I do now? So I have dq as rho dV. Now I know that contribution of one small element df, if I integrate over the whole volume, I will get my net force acting on the test charge Q0 due to all the smaller components. So I get Q0 4 pi epsilon naught integral of dq by r square into r hat. This was the expression we derived earlier in slide 1. Now in this expression, I will put the value of dq as rho dV. So that gives me the force as rho dV r square r hat. So integrated over the whole volume. So that gives me my total force acting on the charge Q0. Similarly, I can find out the electric field associated with this volume charge distribution. So electric field would be force per unit charge. So just simply divide this expression by Q0 and you have the expression for electric field associated with volume charge distribution. So now we move on to surface charge distribution. Now surface charge distribution is spread over a two-dimensional surface. Like suppose this is my two-dimensional surface. It is a sheet which is having some charge distribution. So now I want to find out what is the contribution or what is the net force on the charge Q0 which is located at some distance from the surface. Fine. So again, how do I proceed? For this, first of all, I will define surface charge density. That would be charge per unit area. That would be charge per unit area. And the unit for the surface charge density would be coulomb per meter square. Now knowing the surface charge density, this helps me find what is the amount of charge in that particular small element. So suppose this is a small element I am considering. For the whole surface S, I am considering only a small element ds. Okay, I consider only a small element ds which is at some distance from the charge Q0. So the small charge which is contained within this small element ds would be sigma times ds. Now knowing the value of this distribution, knowing the value of dq, I can easily find out the value of the force exerted, net force exerted, because we know that due to this small amount dq, I can simply apply for a point charge, I can apply the Coulomb's law of force. So due to this small element, force df would be dq into q0 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught r square into r hat. This would be the contribution of one small element dq. Now if I want to find out the net force due to all the elements together, I can simply take the integral of this small force and integrate it over the whole surface. So I integrate for the expression for force. and in place of dq, now I can put the value of dq in terms of its surface charge density. So I can write it as 1 by 4 pi epsilon, and I put dq as sigma ds. Q naught goes outside the integral, r square into r hat. This gives me the value of force exerted due to a surface charge distribution when the object is two-dimensional in nature. Now we have got the expression for force, so we can also find out the expression for electric field associated with such a distribution. That would be simply the force per unit charge. Okay. Similarly, on the same lines, we can understand line charge distribution. So suppose there is a one-dimensional curve or a line L. Fine. So your charge is distributed over this one-dimensional curve. Okay. So consider a very small element dl of this element of this charge distribution. Now I will take the contribution of this small element dl, and to take that contribution, first I need to define lambda. Lambda is my linear charge density. It is called as linear charge density. It is defined as charge per unit length of the line at that particular point. So lambda is dq by dl. This gives me basically कि इस पर्टिकुलर छोटे से एलिमेंट dl में कितना नेट चार्ज होगा. It would be dq equals to lambda times dl. Now I know the amount of charge contained within this small element dl. I can take the contribution of this small charge by applying Coulomb's law, Q naught dq r square r hat. And then to find out the net force due to the whole distribution, I integrate it over the whole line, and that would give me my total force exerted by this line charge distribution. So Q naught comes outside. In place of dq, I can write lambda times dl and r square. Here it becomes r hat. Okay, so this whole integrated over the length L. So this helps me find out the force exerted due to this particular line charge distribution. Now we have got the force. We can find out the electric field associated by taking force per unit charge. So now let us learn how to use this technique to find out the formula for electric field due to, say, a long thin wire or a circular wire. Fine. To do that, first look at the question. Obtain the formula for the electric field due to a long thin wire of uniform linear charge density lambda without using Gauss's law. Now Gauss's law we will study in coming lectures, and that law basically makes it easier for us to find out the electric field due to charge distribution without going into all these mathematic portion. It gives us an easier way to calculate the electric field. We'll use that technique whenever we are asked to, but right now we've been asked to do it from first principle, so let's concentrate on that. So we are given a long thin wire, so what we will do is we'll consider a symmetric section of that wire. So we start from the midpoint of the wire. We take that midpoint of the wire as our origin. Why are we taking midpoint as origin will come clear in a while. So consider that we have to take contribution due to one small element dx, which is at a distance x from the center of the wire. We have to find out the contribution or the electric field at a point P. Fine. That point P is at a distance y from the center of the wire. So let's join the small element dx to the point P. This angle subtended at the point is called as theta. This is the angle between the point P and the element from which we are considering the contribution. So suppose there is a charge distribution here dq. This small element dx will contain a small charge dq, which will be lambda time dx. Lambda here is our linear charge density. Charge is distributed over a wire, so we will take linear charge density into picture. Now at this point, if we put a test charge, it will be repelled along this line. It will be repelled along this line, joining the point P and the point element dx. Now this small contribution dE, the small component of electric field, can be taken as sum total of these two components of electric field along two perpendicular directions. So if this angle is theta, angle OP, and at the element dx I can mark r. If angle OPR is theta, then vertically opposite angle will also be theta. So this would be the element of electric field along y-axis, and this element of electric field is along negative direction of x-axis. Okay, now if we see dEy obviously would be equal to dE cos theta, and this would be dE sin theta, and because it is in the negative direction, I can also put a minus sign here to indicate that it is along the negative direction of x-axis. Now if we consider, we have taken the midpoint of the wire as our reference point. So obviously if I consider any element dx at an equal distance x on the other side of the origin, we will see, and if we join, we will see the element there also will give some amount of force. Corresponding to that we will have electric field, corresponding to that we will have y and x components of the electric field. So we can see that this component, the component on the left hand side, when it contributes, it will contribute in a manner that the sin theta component will get cancelled out by the two halves of the wire, whereas if we see, the cos theta component will get added up due to two halves of the wire. So in a nutshell, we can write down, first of all let us write down what would be the contribution of electric field by the small element dq at this point. It would be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught dq time r square. Now in place of dq I can put lambda time dx, and in place of r square, this is r, the distance between point P and the element dx. In terms of x and y, I can write it as x square plus y square, where x is the distance of the element from the center of the wire and y is the distance of the point at which I am taking the contribution from the center of the wire. So this gives me the small contribution of electric field due to a small element dq of the charge. Now I already told you that the y components along due to both the elements will get added up, whereas the components along the x axis, they'll get cancelled out. So I can write electric field, the total electric field, as twice of, I'm writing dE cos theta, 2 dE cos theta, because we know that from the left hand side of the origin to the right hand side of the origin, both the components will get added up. So I will only integrate from 0 to infinity. I will not integrate from minus infinity to infinity, but I'll integrate only from origin to infinity, because I've taken the factor of 2 here to account for the fact that they will get added up. 4 pi epsilon naught lambda dx x square plus y square remains the same. Now the value of cos theta, to account for that, what we can do, I can take lambda outside, I can take 2 outside, let's get 4 pi epsilon naught outside, and I can take x as y tan theta. From this figure I was getting, this was theta, this was y, and this was x. So my x can be written as y tan theta. So this gives me dx as y secant square theta d theta. Okay, this is just derivative of the derivative of tan theta is secant square theta. So I have taken the value of dx in terms of theta. So my expression reduces to E is equal to, now I have to integrate, I am putting all these values which I have found above into the expression. This will reduce to lambda by 2 pi epsilon naught. Now I will integrate from theta 0 to pi by 2. Now because why I have changed the limit from x is equal to 0 to x is equal to theta in place of theta, how I have taken the limits from x to theta, because I have used substitution method. I have taken x as y tan theta. So now dx I am writing in terms of theta, y square plus x square I am writing in terms of theta. So that's why I also have to change the limit. Now I won't be putting the value of x, in fact I will be using the values of theta. So I get cos theta, which was already there in the expression, this value. In place of dx I will put y secant square theta d theta. In place of y square plus x square, y square remains y square, but x I am putting as y tan theta. So this becomes y square tan square theta. Now y can be taken as common, y square can be taken as common, and 1 plus tan square theta would be secant square theta. So secant square theta will get cancelled out with 1 plus tan square theta. So I can take it as 1 plus, this y square becomes common, I get 1 plus tan square theta. So this expression has got cancelled because 1 plus tan square theta is secant square theta. Y and 1y get cancelled, and all I am left with is that expression for E becomes lambda by 2 pi epsilon naught y, and integration of only cos theta d theta remains. Integration of cos theta is sin theta. So I get sin theta going from value 0 to pi by 2. So I get sin pi by 2, which is 1, minus sin 0, which is 0. So ultimately I am left with the value of electric field as lambda by 2 pi epsilon naught y, which is what we had set out to do. We have found out the expression for electric field due to a wire, which is infinite in nature. Now we move on to another important case. The question says that a charge is distributed uniformly over a ring of radius a. We have to obtain an expression for electric field intensity at a point on the axis of the ring. So let's place the ring perpendicular to the x-axis. So that's why it becomes easy for us to calculate the resultant on the x-axis. So, and we also have to show that for points at large distances from the ring, that is when x is very very greater as compared to the radius, when x becomes very large as compared to the radius of the ring, we have to show that it behaves like a point charge. That would be the last part of the question. So let's start doing the question. First, what again we use our technique, we will find out what would be we cannot apply the Coulomb's law per se to this question. So what we do is, we'll consider that this ring is composed of very small elements, each carrying a charge dq. We will take contribution of one such element, and then we will integrate it over the total length of the ring to get the net contribution due to all the elements. Fine. So dq would be lambda times dl. We are talking about a linear charge distribution. So linear charge density we will define as lambda would be the charge contained over the whole length of the ring. So the circumference of the ring is 2 pi a. So lambda becomes q by 2 pi a. So this gives me this small amount of charge as q times 2 pi a into dl, where dl is this small element which we have taken from the ring. Okay, now what would be the contribution of this small amount of charge towards the electric field? It would be 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught times dq by r square. This is our r distance from the element. Now r I can write in terms of the radius of the ring and the distance from the center of the ring. So I can rewrite this expression as let's, in place of 1 pi 4 pi epsilon naught, let's use the notation k, because anyways it's a constant. In place of dq I will put this expression q by 2 pi a into dl divided by r square. Okay, this is contribution would be the small element dl. Now this element de, which you can see in the figure, this which I am marking as 1, this small element of the electric field can be taken out in terms of its component. Each component, one would be along the x-axis and one would be along the y-axis. Now theta here is the angle between the point P and the center of the circle, the line joining the center of the ring and the point P. So accordingly we will have this angle corresponding to this, we will have this angle as theta. So we will take the components, one along the y-axis and one along the x-axis, and we will see that all the sine theta components will cancel each other out. They will cancel the effect of each other out when we take the whole ring. So if there is a small element dl on the top hand side, there would be obviously a small element corresponding to it below the origin also. So all the sine theta components will basically cancel each other out. So what we will be left with will only the axial components. So then I can simply rewrite this as the total electric field would be integral of dE cos theta over the circumference of the ring, 0 to 2 pi a. Fine. So we write dE cos theta. We are taking the integral over the circumference of the ring. Now just put in the value of dE, put in the value of cos theta in terms of x and a, and we will get our expression. So let's proceed with that. In place of cos theta, we can put x upon r. So I can rewrite it as E is equal to 0 to 2 pi a kq by 2 pi a to dl by r square into x by r. Now again r is, we can see from the figure, r square is x square plus a square. So we'll use this fact here, and my expression reduces to kqx by 2 pi a 1 by x square plus a square raised to power 3 by 2 into, the only thing that is left in the integral is dl. That is left is dl integrated from 0 to 2 pi a. So integration of dl would be L. So once we put the value of L here, L is the total length of this ring, that is going to be equal to the circumference of the ring. So it would be multiplied by 2 pi a. So that 2 pi a get cancelled by 2 pi a which is there in the denominator, and we are left with kqx x square plus a square raised to power 3 by 2 as the expression for our electric field due to a circular ring at the axis of the ring. Now for distances very far away from the ring, we can take that the value of x is very large as compared to a. So in the denominator we can ignore the value of a. So my expression reduces to kqx divided by x cube. So this x and one of the x's at the denominator cancel out, and we are left with kq by x square, which if you remember was the expression for electric field due to a point charge. So that was our second part of the question. Next we move on to a modification of this previous question. The question says there is a thin semicircular ring of radius a. It is charged uniformly, and we have to find the electric field at the center of this semicircular ring. So now we consider two elements dl which are symmetric along the axis OP. Now because we can see from the geometry of the figure that the two components which are along the x-axis, they will get added up, whereas the component which is along the y-axis, they will cancel each other out. Due to each element, the electric field at the center would be along the directions shown by the arrow DE in each case. Now if we take the components of this electric field vector along the x-axis, this is my x-axis, this is y-axis, the components along the x-axis will get added up, whereas the ones which are perpendicular to x-axis will cancel each other out. So due to a small element dl, the contribution of electric field would be dq cos theta divided by a square. Cos theta, because only the cos theta component that is along the x-axis will be able to survive. The y components, that is sin theta component, will get cancelled out. Fine. Now we know that this is a linear charge distribution, so a small amount of charge in this small element dl would be given by lambda times dl. Now from the figure we can see that dl is nothing but a times d theta, where theta is a small angle which is subtended by the arc at the center of the semicircular ring. So I can rewrite my expression for small small amount of electric field at the center by the element dl as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught lambda times a d theta. In place of dq I put lambda times dl, and in place of dl I have used a d theta. A square remains a square and cos theta remains so. Now I integrate this expression from within the limits of minus pi by 2 to pi by 2. If we can see the angle here, the angle for a semicircular ring, when I am taking origin to be the center of the semicircular ring, then the value of theta can vary from minus 90 degree to 90 degree. So I integrate the expression within those limits, and I get my expression for E as 2 times 0 to pi by 2. We are using symmetry, lambda times cos theta d theta times a, and by reducing it, this will give me the expression for electric field at the center of semicircular ring as lambda by 2 pi epsilon naught a. So that's it. In fact, when we discuss Gauss's law, both these can be done in a much simpler manner, but in case at times we are asked to do it with first principles, so we have done this derivation too. Thank you and have a nice day.